You will love his wit and smile when he shares his charm with you. He's got a star that can't be denied on Lee Pitts Live. Come on and listen. You will enjoy and learn if you're wise. There's talking and singing. Everything is there to keep you swinging. We're glad you turned in to Lee Pitts Live.
Good morning and welcome to a very special Lee Pitts Live show. I'm your guest host, Tim Hart, and today we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Lee Pitts Live. And we're doing it by dedicating the entire show to just one special gentleman, the man, the myth, the legend, Lee Pitt himself. So get your family up, go get your friends, gather around the TV, because you won't get an opportunity to hear Lee talk about himself again for another 20 years. We'll be back in a minute to talk to Lee. Welcome back to Lee Pitts Live. I'm your guest host, Kim Hart, and it's time to welcome our one and only guest, Mr. Lee Pitts. Let's clink him, Lee. Welcome to the show.
Hey man, I'm nervous, man. You put me on the hot seat, and
does it feel strange to be a guest on your own show?
Extremely strange, and I've avoided doing this for the past 15 years because one is I always wanted to make the show available for other guests, and since we have such a demand for the show, for me to come and sit on the show for 30 minutes, it just pushes our show way back. Other people could be here and all of that, but I think at a 20th anniversary type celebration like this, it's time for me to sit down and get grilled.
And that's good because, you know, I've done the show with you so many times and there's so little I know about you. And if you don't mind, I'd like to start right at the beginning. Tell us about your childhood. Where did you grow up? What are your best memories? Well,
and you're not the only person who would say that they don't know very much about me. Some people can read stuff about me. Even when I get interviewed, I avoid interviews like the media, magazines. They want to talk to me. I'm like, I don't want to be in the spotlight. But I actually grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. My mom was a single. Well, my mom and dad were married, but they were separated the whole time as long as I can remember. And then they officially got divorced when I was in high school. So my mom raised 7 kids by herself. We grew up in the housing projects. We were on every form of government assistance that you could possibly have. So, and my mom and dad are still alive now, and my mom was a big influence on me, and my dad had some influence, but my mother had the most influence. And at that time, it was difficult to see any kind of vision in terms of where life might take us. But fortunately, I grew up in a very strictly religious household. My mother was a diehard Christian, sanctified, holy roller, and she kept us in church on Sundays, and I think that was a big influence on me in terms of character and how I might have turned out in life, because there was no role models in the community at that time. I didn't see anybody that I thought I could aspire to be. That was, as it relates to media, though, I never thought I would really be in media, but I had these strange thoughts about being a disc jockey on the radio, and I used to practice with this disc jockey on the radio when I was around 12. Interesting story. This radio disc jockey in Birmingham was really popular. He came on the air at 5 o'clock p.m. and he would say, "Good morning, good afternoon, Birmingham. Currently we're taking 85 degrees, blowing below your funky knees," and those were the players, everybody, the Ohio players, OHI, Ohio, kicking it to you right here on WIN, W-E-N-N, WIN, is going to make you a winner. So I kept practicing with him, and my brother saw me practice with him, and I just thought, well, you know, maybe I could be a disc jockey one day. And if I become a disc jockey, I can get a girlfriend. That was the key at 12 years old. And
always the motivation.
And to sum that up is that even when I open up the show now, it's a homage to those days in the housing projects with no air conditioning and the fan blowing and the curtain hanging out the window. And I'm in that room upstairs dreaming about being on radio. And so when I open the show and say, "Good morning, Southwest Florida. Welcome to another edition of Lee Pitts Live. I'm your host, Lee Pitts," and so on. It's that practice that I had when I was 12 years old, and I tell kids today, you never know what you're training to be, so just continue to set your goals high and dream that, and sometimes your dreams come true.
But who were your role models?
Well, early on, my role models were school teachers. Fortunately, my mother, of course, was my role model. I saw her work all the time, and she had like 3 jobs. And so even today, I have roughly 3 jobs. I'm always having 3 jobs. If I'm not having 3 jobs, I feel like I'm a failure in life. But I latched on to my older brother, Eugene, who's now a certified public accountant. I'm plugging you, Eugene, on TV. And he never wants to take credit for me. He was like, you're just my little snot-nosed brother following me around. But I saw him do a lot of positive things. He stayed off drugs. He got into his books, and he kept his eyes on me. He was always monitoring me. And then tennis legend Arthur Ashe. He became a big influence that I would never even imagine. He met me as a child. He found out that I was a swimming prodigy at that time. The kids told him that he had come to the neighborhood to conduct tennis clinics for inner city kids. He found out through that clinic that I was doing around 10 years old that I was a swimming star in the area. And the kids told him, and he said, hey man, you might want to focus on that swimming. You could grow up and become a swim instructor or get a scholarship to college or anything like that, something like that. And I thought the guy was just blowing smoke. I mean, who, me in here in the hood, and I'm not going to go anywhere in swimming. And, a lot of things transpired from his planting that seed in my head, and I eventually put out a swim lesson DVD. We just saw the cover on television. I became relatively famous as a swimming teacher, and even to this day, more people know me as a swimming instructor and some of the work I did in Fort Myers at the Stars Complex, a lot of volunteer work. I swam in college, I swam, and I taught swimming, I coached swim teams, and became a really successful swimmer and got inducted into the Boys and Girls National Hall of Fame as a swimming instructor. And now I'm good friends with Michael Phelps, and I run a Michael Phelps program now. I'm the only swimming instructor in the state of Florida who actually runs a Michael Phelps certified swimming program. So a lot of things happened as a result of that. And in fact, I wouldn't be on television, Kim, if had not I got into swimming, because as a result of getting into swimming, I became relatively popular. I did a lot of commercials, and then I was asked if I was interested in hosting my own television show because I was on television a lot talking about swimming. And that's how Leap Is Live came into fruition.
And you know, before you shared that story with me, I always wondered, how does a black boy out of Birmingham, Alabama decide, I think my sport will be swimming?
It wasn't easy, man. I excelled at other sports, which made it easier for me. I got into swimming around 6 years old, which was made even more easy for me because when I got into swimming in the hood, luckily there was a swimming pool in the hood, and I got some free swim lessons from the Boys and Girls Club. And then by the age of 9 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old, my instructor started letting me help him teach. So I became a swim instructor. In theory, in practicality, I became a swim instructor at around 8 years old. And then I went on to swim competitively and started breaking records and became popular. So once I became popular at a young age, all of my childhood friends started embracing me. But they did call me the guy who's participating in the white boy sport. And that wasn't the coolest thing, Luckily, I was a great little basketball player, and I was a pretty good football player, and I boxed. I was a Golden Gloves boxer at a real young age at the rec center. And so they gave me a break on the so-called white boy sport. And I'm glad that didn't get to me totally, because even today, a lot of the work that I do teaching kids to swim, if I had followed their negative input on me being a swimmer, I would never have gotten all the skills that I need to become a scuba diver and a swimming instructor. And one of the other things that I want to add into this is that when I sat out to swim, my mother couldn't afford for me to go to the pool. It was 50 cents at the time to go swimming. My mother said she didn't have that type of money. So she challenged me to find a job. So around 6 years old, I got my first job, which was walking around in the neighborhood looking for deposit bottles on the ground. So kids would call me the crazy swim boy who's looking for bottles. And I would get my bottles that day. I think I needed, for 5 cents a bottle, I needed 10 bottles a day. And then I would go swimming, and I would practice. Eventually I got discovered at the pool, and they put me on the swim team, and the rest was history.
Well, you had to have other jobs in your life other than talk show host.
Well, uniquely enough is that I went on to college and got my bachelor's degree at Talladega College. Then I went on to get my master's degree at Atlanta University in finance. So I took a job right out of school in banking. And I rose quickly through the ranks and became a vice president at what was then First Union Bank. I think I was a vice president around 29 years old. And certainly in Southwest Florida, a black vice president at a major bank at 29 was something to, kind of feast your eyes on. So So I stayed in banking for 20 years, and now, of course, First Union has went to Wachovia, now it's Wells Fargo. So I rose through the rank as a regional director. And then I also always would have my job as teaching swimming, working with kids, and I still do that to this day, and then the television thing. So I always had three things going on, and I've always had three things going on at least since I've been on television for 20 years.
And how did that transform into the Lee Pitts Live show?
Well, Lee Pitts Live, as I said, it sprung off from being interviewed so much for swimming. I mean, I was interviewed on national shows, local shows, radio, television, and then I appeared on WBR. I was being interviewed about swimming, and the guest host at the time of a show who was interviewing me on the show, she went on vacation, Marion Retton Sims. She asked me to sit in as a guest host for her. I had no ambitions, no interest in being on television. I had a full plate, as I already articulated. And when I hosted her show, she came back after about 2 weeks, and then I went on about my merry way. And then I got a call from the general manager, Hugh Boyd. He said, "Hey, Lee, are you interested in your own TV show?" And I said, "Well, I'm not interested." And he kept calling and kept asking, and I finally agreed to a TV show. And then we had to agree to the name of the show. At that time, it was Up Close with Lee Pitts.
Why Up Close with Lee Pitts?
One of the reasons, that's a good point, I did not want my name in the spotlight.
Why not?
So it was Up Close in big letters, and then Lee Pitts in little small
Little
letters.
tiny Lee Pitts.
I wasn't trying to be in the spotlight. People may find that unusual, but I'm not a guy who's really trying to be in the spotlight. People call me into the spotlight, and I go. Even when I was a kid, I was the president of the student government of my high school. I didn't want to be president of the student government. My buddies wanted me to run for president of student government because they felt that it was high time that somebody from the housing projects become president of the student government, and they thought I had the goods to win the election. So I ended up running, and I became president of student government. But I hosted an interview on my particular show, Up Close with Lee Pitts, that was debate between T. Wayne Miller and Bruce Grady when they were running for mayor. And all the media wanted to come because we were live on the air at 6 o'clock. Fox, Wink, BBH, all of them came to the TV studio, a little small, one-camera station, you might recall. Anyway, when they talked about my show, the news press and everybody, the debate that I hosted, they did not take time out. I was so insignificant to them, Kim, that they referred to my show as Lee Pitts Live. They didn't ask the name. It was Up Close with Lee Pitts. I saw it all in the paper. I saw it on the evening news, the debate I was hosting between these mayoral candidates. And I said, they referring to my show the wrong way. It's not Lee Pitts Live. It's Up Close with Lee Pitts. They just disrespecting me. So I said, okay, I'll change the show to Lee Pitts Live so in the future we won't have that problem. So that's how Lee Pitts Live evolved back about 18 years ago.
So they actually did you a favor.
They did a favor. It works out. It works good for the cups. Works good for everything, man. Everybody says, hey, man, it just worked out. It rhymes. It just works out. And I didn't even like that name when I was a kid. Lee Pitts. It was just a boring name.
Right.
But it works good. It's simple. It's to the point, and it worked out.
Now, you are so good at this job, and you do everything so smoothly. It looks like you're not working at all, but I know behind the scenes a lot has to be done. Share that with us.
Well, just like you as a famed attorney, when you go and do what you do as a lawyer and you become successful at winning your cases, when you go before the judges or whatever you do in terms of your paperwork, your deposition, all of that, a lot of work goes into it. But when you in public or when you're dealing, people don't realize all this going on in your head. So, but you've seen me work over the years. So I spend a lot of time reading and preparing. And most of the work is behind the scenes. The on-air part is the easy part. It's the preparation, making the guests comfortable. My thing is I approach the whole show like a full-course meal. And here's what I mean by that. I see myself in this full-course meal. I see the guests as the entree. They're the meat, they're the potatoes, they're the rice, they're the greens, they're the chicken, okay? And I'm just a discrete plate up under the meal holding it up. I try to make sure that I'm not the subject, I'm not the topic. When people tweet me, Facebook me, they want to know more about me, but it's not about me, it's about the guests. So as long as I can keep myself in the background, make my guests look good, everything works out. So that's how I prepare, and hopefully when they walk away from the meal, their thirst will be quenched and their appetite will be satisfied by what the guests had to say and not what Lee Pitts had to say.
Now in 20 years there had to have been good guests, and there probably were some bad guests. Now, we don't want to mention any names, but what was the most difficult guest you ever had?
I think I've had you're right, I've interviewed over 4,000 people now. But the most difficult guest was a kid that I had a long time ago that was on my show to get adopted. He had come in from the Children's Network of Southwest Florida, and he wanted to appeal to the public for adoption. So when he sat down, I had just come off an interview, say, with, I think it might have been the mayor of Fort Myers at the time, who was the recent mayor of Fort Myers, not the Henderson, but Humphrey. I had just finished interviewing Jim Humphrey, and he was the little boy was the second guest, and I was still wrapped up and wound up in this high-level interview style, meet the press type moment. And then when the little boy was sitting there, Kim, I started asking him questions like I was lobbing fireballs at him. You know, what's your name? Why do you want to be I had to catch myself. Hey, he's only 10 years old, Lee. So I backed off, and I realized, hey, I need to get him talking. So I said, what's your favorite food? He said, pizza. What's your favorite television show you like to watch? And he talked about Barney and Elmo. And then I got him relaxed, and then eventually he got adopted, and that was a great interview.
What is the show over the last 20 years you're most proud of?
The show that I'm most proud of, I would say, was the show that I brought on the children from Lee Charter Academy. Lee Charter Academy is located, now it's going to be moving, but it was located on Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard. And for the past 3 years, it has been an A school in the state of Florida in terms of the FCAT. A lot of people didn't know about Lee Charter Academy and what those inner city kids had done. Everybody expected a school like that to fail. They went from an F school to an A school, but not only were they at A school, they went for A school for 3 consecutive years. And I thought that needed to be told. And I see myself in those kids, you know, inner city. Most people don't have high expectations of you in terms of achieving, and then you defy the odds. Just like, you know, those who say it can't be done are usually interrupted by those who are doing it. So that was the top show. I see some pictures flashing, and people are looking at those pictures. I'll talk about them when I get a chance. Rick, go ahead.
One of the things that
That's
really...
Lee Charter Academy, by the way. Those kids right there, Lee Charter Academy.
Ah, great.
Go ahead.
One of the things that has really changed over my lifetime and yours is race relations here in Southwest Florida. What have been your observations?
Well, I thought about that. I think about it all the time because I get asked that all the time. One of the things is that race is a good thing. I mean, in the sense of that all of us are diverse people. America, as it was always said, is a country of migrants. Everybody came here from somewhere else. Now, as it relates to Southwest Florida is not much different from any other places I've traveled, not only in the U.S., but around the world. People who are similar have a tendency to hang around people who look, act, and think like them. That's pretty standard. The key, though, I think, is that as people starting to broaden their perspective of getting to know other people. Once you get to know other people, like me, I have the privilege of being on television. So I interact with people all the time. I interact with people in the mainstream world. I work in banking, so I got a chance to do that. And I think here in Southwest Florida, because most people are segregated, you know, you have the Hispanic community, the black community, the white community, you have the people on the islands. We don't interact as much. So whenever I get a chance to interact with people, I try to let them get to know me as a person. And even in the school system, as more and more people are getting to know each other as individuals, it makes race relations a lot easier.
Today we're celebrating one of the saddest days in our country's history, 9/11. Do you remember the first show you had to do after that tragedy happened? Yes.
I remember saying, okay, what do I do on my show that's different from what everybody was doing nationally as related to 9/11? And the only thing that I really could do was find some local people who had been impacted, relatives or friends who were part of that tragedy. And so we did some shows on that. And what was so interesting is that when those people came on the show, they, as sad as they were about the tragedy of their loss, they felt they were really uplifted about the way the United States had rallied around the families and friends of people who had died.
And do you think that tragedy affected the black community any different than the white community? Or was this one of those situations where we could all honestly join hands and see ourselves as one?
I would certainly say the latter.
I have noticed in my coaching of YBA basketball that the 13, the 14, the 15-year-old kids, they absolutely do not see race anymore. They do not notice color anymore. And I saw that happen in my lifetime, and I am so proud of that.
And I think the reason that is, though, that's a good point that you make. I see that too. I grew up in the South, segregated Birmingham, little boy. I saw stuff that I didn't know what I was looking at the time in terms of lack of opportunity and I went to all black schools and so on. But I think the music, to me, the biggest thing is the music. Everybody's listening to all types of music now. They are admiring the rappers. You have an African-American president of the United States. But before the African-American president became president of the United States, what you were seeing out of the youths, that was going on before then. That was one of the factors that allowed him to become president, because people have slowly started to become more colorblind. However, President Bush's appointment of Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell to high offices, Secretary of State and Joint Chiefs of Staffs and so on and so forth of the United States played a very pivotal role in terms of race relations. White people got a chance to see, before Barack Obama, they got to see at the national level Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell articulating and explaining themselves and being viewed as intelligent people on a world stage. That was, to me, people don't talk about it, that was the biggest thing, and that helped in race relations. And I think this next generation that comes up, they're not gonna be prehistoric like, say, my generation or my parents' generation. I'm a less prehistoric, but there's a lot of progress that needs to be made.
We only have a few minutes left. This show has just zipped by, but what can we expect in the future from Lee Pitts?
1 hour format, and we're going to eventually become a more live. People don't realize now that we tape these shows, a lot of people, that's the biggest secret, and we air on Sunday mornings. We'll actually be coming live, and we'll be able to respond to blogs and tweets as we're on the air. That's the long-term goal. People now can go to YouTube, and they can see some shows now. They can go to our website, Lee Pitts.
How about radio?
Radio, oh yeah, you're the man. That's why you're gonna get the Emmy Award for this stellar hosting the show. We're looking to have a Lee Pitts Live radio show, and we're also looking to put out a magazine in the future. It's gonna be a Lee Pitts Live magazine, and it's gonna be very similar to the TV show. Good information, positive things that are happening in the community, and every now and then we do some hard stuff too, but I found that if you put something positive out there, people will partake in it.
And you have a signature slogan. You gotta tell me the history of that.
Well, those who say it can't be done are usually interrupted by those who are doing it. I'm so glad that you asked me that, because I get tweeted on that and email on it. When I was a kid, and I told you about this swimming thing, and I got so much criticism for that as a swimmer, from black kids in particular. And my dad told me, he said, Lee, you know what? Don't worry about it. I come home crying and they keep calling me a white boy. When you're black and you're a little kid and people are calling you a white boy, that is not cool. Now, nothing against white people, but little black kids don't want to be referred as white. They want to be black, and we're cool with that, and the music and everything else and how we dress. We love ourselves. And that doesn't mean that we don't like white people. So when they were calling me a white boy, I was thinking about giving up swimming. Of course, we know what happened in swimming, and things worked out. But my dad said, don't just ignore them, because those who say it can't be done, they're usually interrupted by those who are doing it. And I never forgot that. And then I went on to do some tremendous things in aquatics, and so I was trying to think of a way to end the show. When we first started, I was going to say stuff like enjoy, or we'll see you next week. And then I did that one time, and people latched on to it, and we got about 30 seconds left. I'm aware of that. I'll tell this quick story. I went to the airport, and you remember sometimes when you travel with suits, they'll put it in a box for you. Well, I sent my suit through baggage or whatever, and when I got to the other end to get my clothes at the airport in Atlanta, somebody had written on the box, those who say it can't be done are usually interrupted by those who are doing it. So one of the baggage people saw me in the airport, knew that was my box, and wrote that on there. I never knew who that person was. It just shows you how information travels.
Well, that's all the time we have, Lee. And let me just say, one of the people who was told that it couldn't be done, that's doing it every day, Lee Pitts. Thank you so much.
Peace out.